When a movie fails spectacularly at the box office, there are one of two ways that people involved with it can react to the criticism. One is to go completely off the rails and have just a ridiculous response. But someone like Iman Vellani actually had a pretty diplomatic reaction to the box office results to the Marvels. I don't want to focus on something that's not even in my control because what's the point, she said. That's for Bob Iger. Vellani continued, I'm happy with the finished product and the people that I care about enjoy the film. It's genuinely a good time watching this movie, and that's all we can ask for with these films. See, that's a perfectly acceptable reaction to the Marvels failing at the box office from one of its stars, but I can't say the same thing about director Nia DaCosta's reaction to it because she just sounds completely unhinged with what she has to say. There are pockets that are really virulent and violent and racist and sexist and homophobic.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic.
And I choose the side of the light. That's the part of the fandom I'm most attracted to. Despite their best efforts to try to browbeat and bully people into watching their movie, as we can see, it really hasn't worked. In the second weekend box office, we saw it drop nearly 79% in ticket sales, and that's not good for a movie that cost nearly $275 million to produce, because that means it needs to make probably around $750 million in order to just break even, and by the looks of it, it's probably not even going to hit $300 million, so things are not good for the Marvel, but yet there's still other media outlets trying to use this same talking points in order to attack fan base. I mean, we got this article from Forbes. The Marvels faces anti-woke backlash after box office flop, echoing Captain Marvel attacks. Women ditch the Marvels, proving woke war is nonsense. And this is the one I love about it because they almost kind of refute their whole purpose of making this movie with this article. On Fox News, Greg Gutfeld claimed that the woke idea of making all superheroes a group of fully diverse females beating people up as if they're guys was based on assumptions that there is an audience for that. I mean, this article does go on to say how there is an audience for this type of movie. I mean, it says like there's black women and Pakistani women who want to see a superhero movie like this. And it also is trying to argue that it's not pushing away male audience members because 61% of the people who came out to see this were men, whereas 39% of the people who came out to see this were female. So it's probably using this as sort of a dunk on the people claiming that it's pushing away male audience members. But the thing they failed to realize is that the whole point of this movie was to try to bring in a female demographic, because for the longest time, men tend to watch superhero movies more often than females watch superhero movies. And Marvel understood that, and that's why they were trying to say like, okay, we got a pretty sizable audience, but how do we bring in the female audience as well? Because they're half the population. So let's try to do something that appeals to them. So let's make more female superhero characters. Oh, we want to bring in more black people to watch our movies. Okay, make a black character too. We want to bring in Muslim people to watch our movies. Make it one of the characters Muslim as well. And that's basically what we're seeing right now. They think every time they just put in someone to represent whatever group it is, then they can basically count on that demographic coming to see the movie. But that's not actually how it works. How it really works is you get superhero movies as a whole. So you got the superhero genre, and then it appeals to both male and females of every group and whatever imaginable people who like superhero movies. But every time you introduce a new element to it, you're further subdividing that. So you have the superhero genre, then you have a team up genre, then you have female led superhero teams, you have a whole female superhero team, you have female villain to it. It takes place in outer space, or it has a lot of sci-fi elements to it. There's a lot of comedic elements to it as well, and it's CGI heavy. And you see, every time you're doing this, it's further subdividing it. And as a final result, we get something that's very, very niche that only a few people actually like. I mean, you can look at the scores on Rotten Tomatoes from the people who actually saw this movie. I mean, for the most part, they did like this movie, at least the ones who weren't just review bombing it, either the positive or negative review bombing. And if someone likes this movie, by all means, I'm not going to tell you can't like this movie or you're bad for liking a movie, even if I disagree with you. But at the same time, you have to understand that there's a small target demographic for this type of movie, even if the studio doesn't understand that. And if they would have budgeted it accordingly and like maybe given it like a 50, maybe up to $100 million budget, then this probably would have actually made money. But instead they made a really niche movie and expected it to actually appeal to a wide audience, and it just doesn't appeal to a wide audience. And we're starting to see that in future projects, like Blade, for instance, was announced that it's going to have less than $100 million to make the movie because that's more of a niche property. And I think that's kind of a smart move, but I think it's less to do with them understanding that they need to appeal to the audience that they already have, and more of them just trying to mitigate their losses because they've been suffering at the box offices last year. So unless they're actually going to make some changes in fixing how they're producing their movies in the future and not just giving it a smaller budget because they can't afford it, well, then we're just going to see more terrible movies coming out of the studio.